Welcome to Second Breakfast. Been off the last couple of days. Had to take a bit of a break. Had a lot of work to do on a massive video I put out yesterday. Well, this show is sponsored by your higher power. Your higher power is free to access at any time. I use my higher power to give thanks first thing in the morning every single day. To give thanks for my life, for my health, for my wealth. And then I use my higher power to pray for others. Pray for those that I love and those that I do not. And then I ask my higher power to get help. To help me to get through the day. Just today. If I just get through today, I know I will be okay for the rest of the week. I only have to worry about today. And my higher power helps me to get through that. And I really should ask my higher power to start the show on time. So with that, let's get straight into the intro. And we'll be right back with the show. Should we get this right here? And let's go. Maybe I should try that with the mic on. Thank you very much. Welcome to Second Breakfast, a stream of consciousness that fills part of the gap between the nap and Blazing Cat for Fridays, where we stream on 3 platforms, but not this week. We're only streaming on Rumble and YouTube. We will start restreaming on X on Saturday. We'll get into that some other time. Now, thumbs up, follow, share, subscribe, please. Most of all, the chat is up across all 3 platforms. Comments drive the algorithm. When I'm not driving it down with my forbidden words, this veteran appreciates your support. Please visit my channels and share. I hope you're already having a wonderful morning. It's nice and sunny here today. It's a bit chilly, but of course it's March. It's wonderful. It's March on in right into spring. It's time to start thinking about putting the garden in. If you're not aware, I do have a gardening and cooking channel and canning channel, that is. And on that, by the way, you can find a very easy bread recipe. I make bread every other day, third day, sometimes every 4 days. It depends. It's very easy to make. Actually, I was experimenting yesterday. I decided to use, instead of just plain water, filtered water, I decided to use beet juice. Now I have this regular super beet thing I drink every day, and I decided, you know what? See what happens when I just use the beet concentrate. It's about the equivalent of 4 beets. And of course, I knew the bread would come out looking red, and it looks, well, I haven't sliced into it. I guess next show we'll show what it looks like when it's sliced, because still cooling. And anyways, this bread recipe that I have is so easy. There's no kneading whatsoever. Let me get the OR out of the view here. There we go. It's so easy. I mean, and you can make a small batch, a medium batch, a big batch, or you can just increase it. If you do it by weight, it's super easy. You don't have to guess. And besides, I mean, you could use the actual measurements, like a quarter teaspoon and 2 cups of flour and all that. But if you do by weight, you can't screw it up. And something wonderful I discovered when I was making this bread, just playing this here. And of course, I've got the sound off so you can't hear, but I discovered that there's this whisk that's made specifically for making bread, and it is worth its weight in gold, and how it is so easy to use and mix up the bread. And so there's just adding water. And if you haven't seen one of these before, these bread whisks, it's insane how quick and easy and very easy to clean afterwards as well, too. Look at that. Within 30 seconds, you could have your entire bread mixture just made up. Just pour it right into a greased up bowl. Let it sit 18, 24 hours, whatever. And then that's all you need is the yeast, salt, flour, and eggs. No kneading. And especially if you got some slightly arthritic hands, which usually happens the older we get, not having to knead the bread, make some nice fresh bread all the time. And of course, you can substitute the weight of the flour for different types of water. You want to put substitute some of your flour with oats to make some nice oat bread. Just remember, oats are not really for human beings, right? Oats are for animals, not for humans. You're not going to get much out of them. In fact, they're usually not that good for your gut anyway. But anyways, this video is available on my channel, my other cooking channel. I just thought I'd bring that up because I've been having my bread out here whenever, and I keep forgetting to mention it on the shows. All right, let's get on with the show. Yes, nice bread. So easy to make. Gotten a lot faster than in that video that I made last summer. Well, here's a good reminder. Cat Kenner had posted, funny how science is always playing catch up is something illiterate sheep herders said 2,000 years ago. It's almost as if God was speaking through them to us. And where you can see in the Bible 2,000 years ago, a grateful heart is good medicine, Proverbs 17. And it's not too difficult to fathom. If you have a positive mindset, your day is going to go by positively, which is why I say it's easier to connect with your higher power first thing in the morning and give thanks. Give thanks always. Here we have science, modern day. Gratitude reduces depression by 35%. You don't say. But then again, with science, they have all these other things that they think can reduce depression, like changing the chemical makeup of your body, which you can hopefully do through the power of your mind. You relax, de-stress. It's a lot healthier for your body. Now, let's listen to Truth Seeker here.
Game, and the only reason I'm so happy Canada lost this Olympic hockey game, and the only reason why is because the crash out online is finally proving everything I've been saying about Canada being an open air insane asylum, with 80% of them just being completely unhinged and insane, and 20% being held hostage by these insane people. Online right now, they're canceling our own hockey team for shaking hands with Americans and talking to them. They're calling for death threats. I'm not even kidding. And you have to understand why the New World Order chose Canada as their, testing grounds. Because with the people you can. And if you go to Canada, let me explain what it's like. Do you remember the worst part of high school? Like 16, 15-year-olds, that's 80% of them. They stunted, right? So you see an adult, but you're talking mentally to like a 14, 15-year-old, right? Then you add that corporate bullshit, DEI, woke shit. And that's exactly what it's like. You cannot talk to people. You cannot be an individual. How dare you actually want to do better in life? No. In Canada, we celebrate being mediocre. And if you're not mediocre, then you immediately become a target. Now, if you look at my comment section, people will be like, you left Canada. You're not allowed to talk about Canada. It's like, well, you're not in the United States, stupid, and you're talking about the U.S.
This is something I mentioned often before is how people's minds have been completely manipulated since the COVIDity stupidity. The fear-based narrative does something to the brain. We were just talking here about healthy bodies, right? And then when you stress the body out, when you constantly cause fear, it causes something to the brain. And it only takes maybe 11 days really to fully enforce a habit in somebody. You do it repeatedly over and over again. And the way people react has been taught to them. It is a learned behavior now for many of them, which is why they're so quick to react, which is the way she's describing a lot of people these days. It's this emotional based reaction to fear that has taken over the reasoning in many things. Now, here's a little mention about, I hadn't actually even thought of it, but it makes complete sense, the chemical reaction that could happen here.
After what I just learned, I will never let my baby daughter drink out of this bottle ever again. Most parents think stainless steel is a safe option. Clean, non-toxic, better for you than plastic. But here's what nobody tells you. Cheap grade stainless steel leaches nickel and chromium when it touches acidic liquids like lemon water or orange juice. Your kid's drinking metal with every single sip. Nickel disrupts histamine pathways, and that means rashes, eczema, mood swings, irritability, and kids are 4 times more sensitive than these metals than adults are. Acidic drinks plus low-grade steel equals micrometal release. It's a chemical reaction happening inside their little bodies every time they drink out of this metal bottle. And this is on millions of bottles of Amazon marketed as eco-friendly or safe for kids. So what do? You look for 18-8 or 316 surgical grade stainless steel. That's the stuff hospitals use. Or go with glass bottles. Check the bottom of the bottle right now. If it doesn't say 18-8 or 316, toss it. Your kids' histamine levels will thank you. If you're dealing with weird mystery rashes or symptoms that you can't explain, maybe it's a water bottle. I'm Drew Canoli reminding you how important it is to protect the next generation.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Acidity, a good reaction with metals. Next thing you know, there's a reason why people were drinking, why thermoses on the inside, aside from the fact that it's vacuum and it helps to insulate, why you had glass in there. And it's strange the way I've seen drinking just plain water has changed over my lifetime. We never even would think twice about drinking from a tap when I was growing up at school, at home, and then people needed water. Well, you brought water with you, or you knew that there would be water somewhere available because water was freely running everywhere. Nowadays, it's all in bottles. All in bottles. People just, and of course now people realize what was in the water and they weren't filtering properly. But in a lot of places in Canada, they're doing it to themselves because they're putting fluoride in the water. And just look up the Material Safety Data Sheet, MSDS, on fluoride, right? And then you tell me after you read that whether or not that's safe for the body. Now, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's small concentration, big concentrations, or next to nothing concentrations, it's still a poison. Suddenly and unexpected. Wake up. I have a full letter from Pfizer acknowledging all my injuries and disabilities. Now, this poster here is a nurse, retired nurse, because they were injured by the jibby jab. December 10th, 2025, 19 times on one page alone. This is treason, they write, and pass the buck to literal murder. I have lost literally everything. I'm a single mother of 2 and an RN of 26 years. I want accountability now. Liberal François Philippe Champagne knew and signed off in 2021. See below. Now, this is a subject Pfizer BioNTech and COVID-19 that she received from Pfizer, and they gave her a bunch of information regarding Health Canada. Since Health Canada's original authorization, tens of millions of doses of the vaccine have been put to use in Canada elsewhere. Based on this, Pfizer has full confidence in the vaccine's safety and efficacy. Yeah, what's the date on this? December 10th, 2025. Believe that? After everything that we know about this injection, they're still saying it's safe. We have full confidence in the safety and efficacy, even though they came out and there's videos out there of the CEO of Pfizer saying, oh yeah, we never tasted it. We never tested it for efficacy for transmission, as in they never tested it to see if it would actually work or reduce transmission, which it ended up doing neither of. But yes, safety and efficacy. Of course, they were showing that they actually, they got it from Pfizer. They're showing their evidence. Now here's Inquiry of Ministry. With regard to Statistics Canada report, why can't I make this bigger? An issue. With regard to Statistics Canada, StatCan released data regarding provisional deaths and excess mortality in Canada, which reported significant excess mortality starting in January 2022, specifically among individuals younger than 45, and the Privy Council Office PCO use of winning communication strategies to not shake public confidence. Why did StatScans wait until September 2022 to publish excess mortality data amongst young Canadians when the data was available around March of April 2022? And here it is, signed off by François-Philippe Champagne. Sign this information, 2024. What do we have down here? From 2020 to 2022, a reported of 16,043 deaths, and the value provided in the government in order question of 55,975 deaths for the same year in the same category. There's tens of thousands of deaths happening here. They want to know if they're affected by the jibby jab. Guess what? Carney went and sealed all the vaccine harm records for 15 years. So, goes on to the theme, which seems to come up a lot on this morning show, that our Liberal government works in darkness, and they love to work in darkness because that's how criminals operate. Now, oh, this is not what I had here. Something else has popped up. All right, let's just move on to the next story. Here we have a fellow, Charles Burton, senior fellow, who will give his synopsis on the Liberals' love affair with China.
Last year, this government announced a recalibration of our relations with China. In practice, this meant bowing to Beijing's pressure, adopting the Chinese Communist Party's own terminology by labeling our relationship a strategic partnership. What Canada has always wanted from China is straightforward: a greater share of its vast market for Canadian goods and services. Successive governments have chased this dream. Prime Minister Chrétien championed Team Canada missions, prioritizing trade while downplaying serious concerns over human rights violations. Every leader, up to Justin Trudeau, has tied our economic future to increasing exports to China. Yet, we must face the reality of our failure in this endeavor. In 2024, exports to China represented a mere 3.8% of our total global exports. That's $29.9 billion. This is a fraction of the windfall that Canadians could have reasonably expected when China's policies of opening and reform began 4 decades ago. To put this into perspective, our exports to the European Union stand at 4.8%, or 34.5 billion Canadian dollars. We do better with Europe than we do with the much-touted economic miracle of China. Now the government hopes Mr. Carney can succeed where a generation of leaders has fallen short. He will not. The mercantilists in Beijing will never allow Canadian imports to compete fairly against Chinese domestic products, particularly now as China's economy languishes under Xi Jinping's anti-market status policies. Madam Chair, we must stop treating China as a traditional nation-state. It is a conglomerate of state, industry, and the military security apparatus, entirely unified under the Chinese Communist Party. At the 19th Party Congress last decade, Xi Jinping made this explicitly clear by stating, "Party, government, military, civilian, and academic, north, south, east, west, and center, the party leads everything." When Beijing demands a strategic partnership, they are demanding our collaboration in enabling their overall geostrategic purposes. Nothing illustrates this danger more than the recent agreement signed in Beijing, a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in combating crimes. This entails the RCMP and China's Ministry of Public Security exchanging data, intelligence, and best practices. Canada gains almost nothing from this agreement. However, the data the Chinese now expect us to hand over poses a severe threat to our national security and to the diaspora communities within our borders, particularly Canadians of Uyghur and Tibetan origin. Furthermore, sharing our best practices simply hands Chinese security agencies the very information they need to understand the RCMP's techniques and exploit our vulnerabilities in countering foreign subversion from China. And what is the price of our compliance? A temporary canola tariff reduction that expires at the end of the year, vague MOUs on energy and clean tech, an upgraded bilateral joint economic and trade commission with trade ministers meeting annually. These are not diplomatic victories. They are economic leverage. The government is under immense pressure to not displease Beijing. This means turning a blind eye to espionage agents, permitting Chinese regime investment in our critical infrastructure, stalling effective measures like a robust foreign influence registry to expose Beijing's proxies operating on Canadian soil. Madam Chair, handing over our security apparatus's data and remaining silent on foreign subversion in exchange for fleeting, fractional trade benefits is a profound miscalculation. I am deeply concerned that this government's recent memoranda and its so-called strategic relationship with China are not and will never be of net benefit to Canada. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So that video there was done by Canada Info. And really, it doesn't take a senior fellow at an institution to tell us that a deal with a bunch of communists is a bad idea. A deal with a bunch of communists who have no morality, no ethical boundaries whatsoever, because we know what they do to their own citizens. So why are we getting in bed with them? Oh, because liberals obviously don't have any ethical morals, boundaries whatsoever. And of course, the liberals have proven that over the past 11 years, arbitrarily making a vast swath of the population second-class citizens. In fact, a lot of their policies have to do with making some people more equal than others almost every single time. Let's get on quick to this other story here. So, Corey Anderson over at Western Standard has been doing his job as a journalist. And when people don't like light shone upon their criminal activity, wow, they get a little uppity.
Called a critical tour of a Canadian Prairie Indigenous Reserve, highlighting the living conditions on Siksika Nation and other issues related to the reserve system. Now, when you were shooting the documentary, were you on Siksika property without their permission?
I guess the courts will determine that because I did it off of public highways that go through the reserve and public roads, as well as the parking lot of a college on the reserve, which, again, there's no postings or anything saying that a person isn't allowed to go into any of those spots. In my view, certainly I don't feel it was a trespass.
Now, do you feel the real reason why you received the costly $2,000 in trespassing tickets is because perhaps those with the Siksika Nation didn't really appreciate the message conveyed in your documentary?
Well, at least those in the leadership. I've had some private messages from residents who appreciated it being exposed. Part of what motivated me, as you saw, it's not a real polished production. It was just me out with my phone making this. But I mean, that reserve had gotten $1.3 billion from former Prime Minister Trudeau in 2017. And as I exposed with my video, the conditions out there are still pretty deplorable. And I think some people have a right to ask some questions. Well, what the heck happened with it? Why does it look so tragic out there, despite getting such an injection of funds? And I suspect some of the people don't want those questions asked.
You know, I did watch some of the documentary, you're right, and which you produced, and was kind of a rolling critical commentary, as you mentioned with your phone there, but no interviews. Did you try and reach out to some of the locals to speak on camera?
No, I didn't. And that would be difficult because I guess at that point I would have to go into residential areas, knock on doors, or do things which could become an intrusion technically onto the private property and such. And it was early in the morning. As I said, it was more something on a whim. I didn't anticipate it turning quite into what it did. If I had known it would garner so much viewership, then perhaps I would have taken more time to bring about more views in it. But it was just something done on impulse and put out there. So it wasn't very detailed in that sense.
Now, did you reach out to those with Siksika Nation to see perhaps if you can resolve the issue with the tickets and maybe they'll drop the huge fines?
Yes. Well, I'd started because I was quite surprised when they showed up at my door with a gentleman and dropped those with me. So I'm not a legal expert. I did contact a lawyer first, and the lawyers initially reached out, but they're intransigent. They're determined that I pay the full fine on both of those tickets, which is ironic or odd because there was only one film made, but they charged me based on a short that I put out on the same footage as well. That's why there's two tickets rather than one. It seems to be their charges were perhaps as hasty as my video was.
Now, you've hired the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms to represent you in this case. Trial is scheduled for, I believe, June the 30th. Do you feel this could be precedent-setting for all journalists as you fight back on these trespassing tickets?
I think so. I mean, it's important to be able to, in my view, the problem they have wasn't my traveling through there. Thousands of vehicles drive through that highway every day. What they didn't like was what I documented or my views that I expressed while I documented, which is when you're using the legal system to try and quell messages you don't like coming from media, that becomes very problematic. So, I mean, again, if I'd been intruding on people's privacy or ignoring no trespassing signs, that'd be a different story. But it does appear this was more on the messaging, and a precedent should be set allowing us to continue that sort of coverage.
So as you're rolling through there, Corey, what were some of the red flags or concerns or signs that you saw that things may not be that great on Siksika Nation?
Yeah, well, I've worked in a lot of reserves in the past, and it's pretty common for a lot of them. The houses are in terrible condition. There are feral dogs in the area. There's a lot of garbage in the area. Things such as that, living conditions, which indicates, a lot of social distress. I mean, it's a much bigger problem than just funding, and that's part of what I wanted to point out was that this is serious, and money alone isn't going to take care of these issues that are happening out there. But people need to see firsthand. Kind of most people never get on a reserve, so just to see. It's not turning out as well as people intend, no matter what the good intentions may be.
Journalist and commentator with the Western Standard, Corey Morgan, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, so I remember, come on, let's get rid of this. There we go. I remember in growing up in my youth, my grandparents' maternal side lived in Kirkland Lake, Ontario. And of course, we would go up and visit quite a bit. Sometimes I would spend parts of my summer up there. And I remember in my preteens, walking around downtown Kirkland Lake, walking throughout the whole little town that it was. I mean, things were safe back then. And just exploring like a child would, going everywhere, checking out the city boundaries. I didn't have a bike to ride around, so I had to do everything by foot. And of course, there was a reserve just outside of town. And I remember walking up the road into the area and seeing the disparate change. It was complete. It was like walking to the third world. Now, I don't know how much things have improved since then, over 50 years, but obviously, things don't seem to change much. Like they say, History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Now, seems like a lot of problems that have propped up over the past 11 years in Canada have all been due to, well, liberal policies. And one of the liberal policies that they have had in one of their three pillars of building a massive mountain of skulls for their new utopian society is, their eugenics program of getting rid of useless eaters that are a drag on society, which is why we have stories like this that we never used to in Canada, that people would think that this is allowable.
For medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford. He barely survives on Ontario disability support payments, which are just over $1,200 a month. He doesn't want to die, but being homeless is not an option.
I know in my present health condition I wouldn't survive it anyway.
Farsood meets the criteria for MAID, physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved. His doctor, who knows Farsood's real reason for MAID is his fear of being homeless, signed off on the application in August. Farsood needs a second to do the same. There's a 90-day waiting period. He believes he could potentially access MAID in about a month.
I don't wish to be dead, even with the pain, even with the meds. I still want to be here.
Over $22 billion sent to Ukraine to cause more death. But we can't take care of our own citizens. This is what has become to Canada under the death cult that is running it, the death cult known as the Liberal Party. Here's Maria Zalea. Zalar Golami, Canadian cruiserweight boxing champion, had 17 bullets shot into his boxing gym. Why? For supporting the freedoms of Iranians. Anita Anand, always great my teeth when I talk about her. Her Minister of Foreign Affairs said last year she was concerned about Tehran activating terrorist sleeper cells on Canadian soil. An estimated 700 Iranian regime agents covertly operating in Canada. They came to Canada knowing this was going to be their safe haven. Yes, the Liberals love to bring in people that don't like Western society. This is the consequence of loose Liberal immigration policies where tens of thousands can come into the country without ever speaking with a government official. That's right, Canada. If you didn't know this, you don't have a 34% increase in population that has accelerated stupidly over the past 4 years unless you just don't check into them. The math didn't math. 10 seconds per person, per employee that actually checks backgrounds, working 24/7. That's if they were actually vetting the time that we would have spent on these files. But obviously, no. Some people just granted full access, willy-nilly, coming into the country. And of course, now we have a shoot up of a gym, but we've had crime running rampant since the Liberals came into power because of what they've done to our country, because of what they have done to the laws. This wasn't like this before. Now, of course, they keep lying to you. Oh, our new government, we could fix this if the opposition would just stop their obstruction in committee. Yeah, okay. How did we get here in the first place? Because of your changes to the laws, because you did not like Canada. You needed to reshape Canada into your own cultural Marxist shithole. Well, congratulations. Here we are. Yes, it's minus 15 degrees in southern Alberta. Everyone needs energy to keep warm. Too bad not a single one of these massive wind turbines is even spinning, says Ezra Levant. It's not about renewable versus non-renewable energy. It's about reliable versus unreliable energy. Now, I've done plenty of pieces on the wind turbines, but I guess it needs repeating. These things only work when there's wind. Why would we create an energy delivery system that is not competent, that doesn't run all the time, that has a necessity to be subsidized in order for it to actually function? People don't realize 80% of the operational cost of a wind turbine has been subsidized since the government wanted to bring wind turbines into this country and build them nonstop, because they realized that once you factor in the cost and the cost of operating them and they only last for 20 years. Well, that was initially what they sold the government. So the cost of building it up and then tearing it down, all of that amortized over 20 years, and the power that it will deliver, you would need to crank up the cost of energy 4 times what we were paying 15 years ago. Well, guess what? Canada, we're on the way there. We just suffered a 30% increase in our energy delivery costs here in Ontario as of the beginning of this year. Why? Because of these green scam ventures. And of course, they don't talk about all the toxicity. That's right. These wind turbines, what do you think allows them to spin? It needs lubricants, so there's petroleum products in there. And the blades, those massive blades, they're not made out of lumber, boys. They're made out of materials that are toxic. They have no waste capacity made for them whatsoever. That's why you will see kilometers worth of wasting blades exposed to the elements, just sitting out in massive areas, exposed to the sun, hoping that over time the elements will just eventually simply destroy them while they leach into the soil. That's the legacy of these massive green wind turbines, let alone the fact that people are paying more for energy. And there's only some people making money off that, and that would be the net zero gurus. And who are the net zero gurus in Canada, I wonder? Could it be perhaps our Prime Minister, who continually pushes net zero? But things in Canada have been going wrong for quite a while. As Barbara Ball continually reminds us, she was the one who was running as CPC opposition to Carney's seat, and which is why she's constantly on X posting. Women and children are so safe under the current government that I can literally cut and paste the public warnings from the Ottawa police. I genuinely don't understand how anyone can support these liberal policies. If you or someone you know has been victimized, please come forward. The Ottawa police has resources to support victims of human trafficking. And it's just a reminder, crime is out of control in this country. Whether they're shooting up gyms or putting out notices or telling you to leave your keys by the door to make it easier for home invaders to steal your car and your property. But when you have places in Canada, municipalities going after homeowners to take down their security cameras because it might offend somebody's privacy that might walk by on the street. It's out of control. The cultural Marxism is out of control in Canada. Speaking of which, Mario's Layer reminds us that if you own a property in Vancouver, you just got screwed by your own government. They did it in secret, so you couldn't protest. Good luck with your mortgages, your taxes, and your land. Lend hands control of Vancouver to Musqueam Indian Band. Now there's a follow-up post by Mario the following day, so let's listen to what he says.
Guys, this is massive and breaking news. I generally don't make videos this early in the morning, but this one's important. This is still not covered in mainstream media, but Juno News just broke the story that Canada just handed control of all of Vancouver. This includes Richmond, this includes Burnaby, to the Musqueam Indian Band. And the area is larger than what I highlighted, but this is the general area. Literally, it's all of Richmond, Vancouver, and Burnaby. And they did it quietly. And the Liberal government, they're refusing to publicly release the agreement that they made with the Musqueam Indian Band that recognizes the Aboriginal title over to the vast majority of BC, including Metro Vancouver and the surrounding areas. This affects nearly 2 million people. They buried it in a fisheries announcement. That was on Friday. Coincidentally or not, while things were ramping up in Iran. And Juno News rightfully said that this could radically undermine property rights in one of Canada's largest and most populated metropolitan areas. And the title of the news release that the government decided to do is that Canada signed a historic agreement recognizing rights, stewardship, and fisheries. Essentially, the government still wants you to pay your taxes on that land, but they want Aboriginal title on top of it. For those who don't know, this recently happened in Cowichan, in a small area where people were then unable to get a mortgage. The government had to step in and back up the loans because banks would not touch it. Guys, this is really, really bad, and it has not hit mainstream media yet. Guys, this is massive.
Holy poop. Holy poop. They really hid that. They hid that in a press release. BC is the third most populous province in Canada. I mean, I refer to it always as the far left coast. And I guess it couldn't happen to a better far left coast province in Canada. You know, they have an NDP provincial government, so I guess they should embrace this. But we also know that there are a lot of foreign investors who own a lot of land in Vancouver, so I'm wondering how they're going to take it, especially since a lot of those foreign investors are also part of the China team, like poking a big stick in China's eye. And they didn't call it Hong Kong for nothing. Well, things are getting worse. So, oh, look at this. Carney's company, Brookfield, is in talks to launch a $50 billion domestic investment fund, raising $36 billion from major Canadian pension funds. $10 billion from the federal government. Well, okay, so it's not $10 billion from the federal government, folks. It's $10 billion from the taxpayer. Yes. Not only are they taking your pension, they're charging you an extra bunch of money that you're going to have to pay down the road. That's if you even have a job anymore. The initiative aims to direct pension capital into large-scale Canadian infrastructure, and ownership of Canadian infrastructure taxpayers will fund forever. Huge profits in buying infrastructure the Canadians will be paying for decades. Prices will explode for Canadian basic living expenses. I calculate my home electricity heating costs are up 500% since 2018. Toll roads, electrical utilities, home energies utilities. Indeed, everything is going up nonstop. And who's making all the money? Liberals and their friends, especially those Brookfield friends. Now, if you think your pensions are safe in Canada because they're CPP or whatever they are, I'm sorry to tell you folks, they're not. All right? So the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP are not part of other pension funds in Canada. They're part of a superannuation fund. So technically, I don't get a military pension. I get a superannuation. And as part of my superannuation, as part of this contract, we're not entitled to CPP. So whatever happens with the CPP fund and all that other stuff is never going to affect my disbursement because I don't get it. In fact, once I'm entitled to CPP, they deduct that amount from my superannuation fund. So I get even less of the actual real pension I paid into. So, I mean, if they got rid of CPP, then it would affect what I get from my superannuation fund. But it doesn't mean that my superannuation fund is also free of sticky government fingers, because the progressive conservatives under Mulroney put in legislation to take the surplus that we had in that superannuation fund to pay down the debt, to do whatever they wanted with that money. That's right, money that was put in there through blood, sweat, and tears, people who operated in the Canadian Armed Forces and did their jobs in the RCMP for decades, only to find that instead of distributing that surplus back to the members, the conservatives took it. Progressive conservatives, mind you, not the current conservatives, because I call the progressive conservatives an oxymoron, right? There is no such thing as a progressive conservative. Like calling somebody a liberal conservative. It's like, what? Excuse me? Makes no sense. So at any time, if you think your pensions are safe in Canada, now we're just a couple of steps away from legislation for the government to do whatever the hell they want with every single property you own, every piece of investment that you have somewhere that they can control, that they have fingers attached to. But they just did to Vancouver. You don't think they're going to take every single last thing from you to make themselves rich? Not looking good, folks. Not looking good at all. Now, there's Mark Carney's full remarks in New Delhi during his meeting with Prime Minister Modi. Energy, critical minerals, AI, defense, trade, $100 billion in pension investments. Woo-hoo! It's the last thing we have left. That's right. The Liberals have so completely destroyed Canada that we have nothing left to give. We have nothing left to give except, I guess harvesting organs would be the next thing. Right, but that's about it. People don't have jobs where they have extra income to invest in much of anything anymore, let alone buy food or pay the rent. So I guess the last thing for them to raid are your pensions. Indian High Commissioner to Canada says that Canada needs 60 million Indians and he can help arrange that. What? Or so we have these new agreements. We'll see how well that goes with India. And what do you think they want in return? What the hell are we going to give them in return? We know that the Liberals are not very good at making deals whatsoever. We've seen that for the past 10 years. Look at the contracts for Stellantis. Look at the way they put out a budget. The Liberals are purposefully doing this because in the end, they don't really care about Canada. They only care about their pocketbook. Now, there's a handful of those politicians within their party who do think they're actually just serving their constituents and that their party is well-meaning. The proof is in the pudding, folks. It's just all that to say that I don't think Liberal politicians. That's not enough. These are the movies we grew up with because they were based on reality. When people were a lot happier, a lot skinnier. Now, watch David Knight-Legg speak on the $750,000 fine for questioning gender ideology in BC is part of the reason why independence is rising in the West. Adds how Albertans are not scared of elite consensus and want to make their own decisions. Of course, let's not forget this story was also done before we just discovered that the Liberals gave Vancouver away. So I'm sure the people on the left coast there are going to be acting a little even crazier this week.
In Canada right now, people are having conversations about this BC human rights fascist,
right?
This woman that had this guy arrested. They've had it with this.
Yeah.
They've had it with people that are kids that are being put on SSRIs and losing their minds and shooting people, and police RCMP that never arrested the guy because they were worried about being called transphobic. And then when the damage happens, they want to blame OpenAI for not alerting them earlier to his bad posts, as if they would have done anything about that. People see through this stuff, and what they see is a corrupted, sad, defensive, status anxious elite that doesn't know how to actually build something. And instead of actually making the hard steps to build consensus and build something in the country, they'd rather run against a caricature of a US president that's unlikable. And I don't think people find that satisfactory. It's just so hollow as a philosophy of what we can be as a nation. And I think when people look at the debt, they look at what's happening with the immigration and asylum fraud. They look at some of the dynamics around what's happening in their schools. They look at this bizarre abuse of the idea of human rights to go after people that have mainstream opinions on sexual identity and what kids should be told in schools. And they just say, you know what? I don't like the direction the country's taking right now, and I want change. And if you're telling me I can't get that change federally, but I can get that change provincially, you're tempting me now. Now, I might not believe in separatism. I might believe that there's a way to have autonomy without breaking out of the country. I don't believe that you can separate geography. We need a new architecture. But whatever that thing is, that sentiment will be expressed and felt in the fall in a very specific way. And I think the Premier's doing some good things, putting some of these issues on the table at the same time as the referendum. I know there's debate about that right now, but I think that Albertans are not easily scared by elite consensus.
Wow. All of these things that are happening because of the federal party that's in power today.
Without pay. 43-year-old Hamilton police officer facing child pornography charges has been suspended without pay. 43-year-old David Hamilton has been charged with possessing and transmitting child sexual abuse and exploitation material. The 19-year veteran of the Hamilton force was charged by Halton police over alleged incidents in Burlington last month. The constable is the first officer suspended without pay in Hamilton since chiefs in Ontario were given wider discretion on discipline in 2024. Hamilton Police Chief Frank Burgeon tells CHCH News, quote, "This was not a decision taken lightly. Our community expects our members to uphold the laws, not break them."
There seems to have been a lot of news stories so far since the beginning of this year regarding this word right here. And It's disturbing. It's disturbing that this has been increasing, but it's not surprising given the liberal ideology and their complete lack of ethics and morals in treating these people and aligning themselves with them and adding them to their alphabet flag. Canada doesn't have a justice problem. Pedos walk free while victims get life sentences in hell. Ontario's top court agreed house arrest was unfit sentence for a man caught with over 22,000 images of 741 videos of child sex abuse, but declined to give him prison time. Kind of country we are now in Canada. We have embraced what is wrong. More on that story of the Hamilton police officer and a reflection of other countries, how they deal with this. But then again, versus India, well, okay, India. This is Muslim country, and communist country. Canada released on bail. Well, okay, maybe the better comparison would have been with other Western nations, but then you probably realize that a lot of the other Western nations are just as sick and dying as Canada. All the child rapists are being brought to Alberta by Alberta Premier Daniel Smith, says Dr. William Mackis. And of course, Dr. William Mackis is not happy with the Premier in the way that she has treated him because of the covidity stupidity. So everything that he dishes out for her, she well deserves. She has just allocated over $1 billion to bring in thousands more pedos doctors to Alberta from all around the world. And here's a story by Mocha Zergin, another excellent independent journalist. If you're not following him online, you should. Covering a story of this other doctor. I believe I have this other story here. No, that's not it, but it's just another example of statistical grandstanding that appears to be a reputable health organization as we shift into what is happening again regarding everything that the Liberals have gotten their hands on, which in this case here is our health ministry and our food ministry. And we can see what's been happening in agriculture as well. They try to scare you with claim that there's a 49% higher risk of diabetes in red meat consumption. But what don't tell you is that there is a relative risk, a comparison between two groups, that the actual risk is between 3 and 5%. Also, consider the study they used on this food questionnaires that counted pizza and cheeseburgers as servings of red meat. So, if you're wondering about your diabetes, just know that in order for your body to correctly deal with sugar levels, your pancreas has to work properly. So I suggest you look into your pancreatic health and what causes your pancreas to work overtime and what toxifies your pancreas. Because really, that little tail of your pancreas there, that's the thing keeping you alive. That's the thing keeping you from getting diabetes. And the best way to keep that little pancreas happy is to eat healthy and not listen to ridiculous studies and look at what worked in the past. And stay away from processed food. It's the best advice we can give. And I think that will bring our show to the end. And I thank you all if you've come out. And by the way, I'm very thankful for the new subscribers that have added themselves to the channels. It's always nice to see it. It makes it feel like the work is actually accomplishing something. So thank you all. We'll be back tomorrow morning. And in the meantime, look out for another video that will come out today. If you haven't watched the video that was out yesterday, go here. Screw you, senators. Not senators. Well, yeah, screw you, senators too. That screw you, seniors is part 4 is a continuing message as the old age security fiasco continues to explode in Parliament during question period. This past week garnered the most questions about it, and again, the ongoing, denials by the Liberals that there are any problems, just a few people that are having issues. Meanwhile, you 85,000 plus seniors out there that are not getting your OAS, some of you for over 6 months, I'm really sorry to hear that, but I suggest you talk to your friends and tell them to stop voting Liberal. That's all I can say. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.